the world. I mean, my 17-year-old got friends across the world, by Skype and Facebook. I'm like, how you know these people?
Mm-hmm.
And it just all, I mean, he has a gaming group that he does at high school called League of Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know you could actually be a professional gamer
Mm-hmm.
with prizes. I'm
Right.
talking about $50,000 prizes. I'm like, seriously?
Right.
Yeah.
And the world is so much smaller now
Yeah, it
because
is.
of things like that. Before it was a big deal that you go get on a plane and fly 13 hours in South America. Well, you can just go on your phone and make a connection with someone from South America. So also the Generation Y, though, as it relates to the workplace, right? Because that's what we're talking about. Is those are the folks that can multitask, right? So they can you go in the office of a Generation Y person or a millennial. They'll be on the computer, listening to music, on the phone, doing it all at once. Not looking at you, right? Not making that connection.
Well, not looking.
What's going on?
That's what
Say, I'm with you. You ask them, what did you say? What went on? They're going to get all of it and spit it right back to you and tell you how you can make that idea that much better, right? But so those are another layers of diversity within that workplace, right? So, what are some stereotypes that we have? They say, wow, this little young guy is here and they want to get a raise or they want a promotion after being here 6 months, right? So we have stereotypes and assumptions with them, right? So we have to look at all of those. We have to look at the big picture for folks for who they are. So that generations at the workplace is huge, right? It's huge as well. So we can discriminate against people and even be adversarial with individuals just because of the year they were born, right? I go to these companies, I do trainings, I've been doing it for 7 years. And sometimes I'm the youngest guy in the room. And some of these guys are just, what are you going to talk about? So sometimes I play with them because I want to have a little bit of fun. So, I met one guy, my contact wasn't there, so her administrator was there. And he came and he shook my hand and he looked at me like, what are you going to teach? Like, what are you going to teach me? Like, what could you possibly teach me? So I said, I just was very docile and came and said, hey, how you doing? All right, I'm here. And I came in, and as soon as he said, he would sit there and he said, you can go ahead and get started with your presentation. And then I just hit him with some statistics. Say, hey, 80% of your management time is spent with 20% of your employees. And then I ran off the statistics to let him know I knew that first sentence was going to engage him, right? So now when I go back to that organization and I see that same administrator there, he says, hey, Mike, how are you doing? So his response is totally different. So it's all on that emotional intelligence. It's the verbal, the nonverbal, like Peter was saying as well. It's the whole package deal, but it's also from our previous experiences within our life. So it's a holistic perspective in terms of how we engage and relate to the people that we work with. Handling sexual harassment complaints, okay?
Mike,
yes, I'm sorry?
What about the younger generation that think that our generation is just slow?
Right. Absolutely. Right. So, one of the things about it is...
We don't multitask like them, but we still get the work done.
Right, absolutely. Well, with each generation is a different stereotype, right? And sometimes you're in situations where you say, wow, I sound just like my mom, or I sound just like my dad. It's true. And our kids, like you say, your son's 17, 5 to 10 years, he's going to be saying, wow, I sound like my dad. And he's also going to be looking at the next generation and making those assumptions and placing stereotypes on them. It's just something that we do innately and naturally. But one of the things in terms of the different generations, how it pertains to the workplace, is just knowing that there is a difference and knowing what our respective strengths and weaknesses are, especially when we're working on projects. So if you're in if I'm a traditionalist or a Generation X or a baby boomer rather, and you feel that I'm slow if you're from a younger generation, but also we are people persons, right? So versus sending me an email, I feel better if you come over and sit next to me and say, hey, Mike, I need you to review X, Y, and Z and get this done. Versus me going to my email and it's like 20 emails down there and I got to go through all of them and you sit right next to me in the next office, right? So, but really knowing how the different people communicate, which is something else we're going to talk about in here, right? How everybody communicates on different levels. So it's all, again, it's layers and layers and oodles of ways that we're different, but really doing the science in terms of knowing how do we communicate with each other? How do you communicate? How do you communicate? Where are you from? What's your ethnicity? What's your background? Where did you grow up? All of these things, is a hodgepodge of experiences that help us have a collective workplace.
Well, I was just going to say, in response to our illustrious social worker, one of the things, though, for the baby boomers coming back into work, that they have to realize also that the technology that's out there is what everybody's doing. So a part of the expectation with them being there is for them to at least engage in it. And I found a lot of baby boomers that are that they're not engaging. So that therefore that causes the problem, because people are trying to help them engage or trying to bring them in on it. Some are willing to learn. Yes, it's a process that they have to go through, that they may be a little slower than they eventually catch it. But I've met plenty of baby boomers, as a matter of fact, talking with patients' families. Don't fax, won't email, won't touch a computer.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
They have to be open to at least explore it.
Absolutely.
Touch the computer. Find out it's not going to shock you.
Absolutely, and it totally affects the workplace because, I work with a baby boomer. Guy was brilliant, PhD, licensed social worker to the highest degree, but we would leave and he would be, the office was close to my house and I would drive by to go to the grocery store and I would look up and I would see him in his office and he's like this and he's typing, right?
Exactly.
And he's trying to get those notes in and nobody was there to help him. Like we always said, wow, he's here. Everybody knew that he stayed 2-3 hours late to do his work, but nobody said, wow, this is my strength. I could get this done within X amount of time. So it's really trying to trade off skills, right?
Exactly.
Trade skills trading to see how you can make that organization better. Yes, sir.
Well, what about the situation where you have a workplace, you got some 26-year-old gazillionaire running the place, and the older folk are really resentful of this guy's success or this woman's
Right.
success?
Right. Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of
Right. It's a reality. And I think, with the generation that millennials or the generation Y, those are risk takers. I mean, you can come up with an app, right? I can make this training into an app right now and be a millionaire next month, right? They're gonna think outside of the box. So it's a different way that they think. But again, so this is the first time in American history that we had all of these generations working together, and based on that, we're still learning, right? We're still learning because we're inculcated in it right now. We're all learning from it at one point right now. So it's just finding out what this really, and it's really having some communication and being, if you're that baby boomer who's staying 2 or 3 hours, late after work and you're typing these notes, you need to say, hey, I need some help, right? I need some help, right? Can you help me, right? But not saying, wow, I'm going to get this done on my own. Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's part of that, what you said, the generation and how they evolve differently and with the communication, because with that is opportunity. So I have talking about the older generation being technologically challenged and the younger ones multitask. So my 12-year-old grandson actually has a business and he's actually developing his website, and it's called Tech Tuesdays. In Tech Tuesdays, they teach senior citizens and elderly how to, what works for them, how to go on the internet.
awesome.
So they're learning from these young kids, but in the communication factor, it's done in a way where they're not feeling challenged or feeling like they're slow, or you know what I mean? So it really is all on how you work it. But here is, again, you said someone younger who looks at it as an opportunity to be that 29-year-old that's going to be running that organization. So it's really on all how we look at it.
Absolutely, and we all can learn from each other.
Right.
I mean, we all can learn from each other. But when we say, when we get the problem, when we say, well, my way is the only way, that's when you don't. You put a barrier up that no communication can happen at all. Okay, all right. So handling sexual harassment, right? This is always fun, right? Sexual harassment examples, okay. Different things. So if I'm, making a sexual harassment, who wants to be my victim, huh? Anybody?
I'll be a victim.
He's okay. So yeah. So he's, he has a blue shirt like me. So I'm attracted to him, right? So I go and I say something that is inappropriate to, what's your name, sir?
Mel.
So I say something inappropriate to Mel. What's your name, ma'am?
Susan.
So Susan stands by and she hears me make this inappropriate sexual harassment statement to Mel. Right? Mel feels upset. He feels uncomfortable. He files a claim, right? And they say, well, we don't have any proof. But Susan doesn't say anything about it, right? She's as guilty as I am, right? For not saying anything because she saw me saying something inappropriate to Mel. Yes, Tanya.
Or what about this? Suppose that you said something inappropriate to Mel, but Mel receives it. It's not an issue, but Susan heard it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wasn't talking directly to her, but she overheard the remarks, so she's offended by it.
Absolutely. Right. It's that third place sexual harassment as well. So that's why, just like we were talking earlier about the preventing violence and saying things in jest, it's like you can't say sexual types of phrases to people within the workplace. It comes down to, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, folks. Again, it's really, we can feel so much at home at the workplace that we forget where we are. And we're in a society that we do feel comfortable sometimes. So this abnormal behaviors are looked at as normal. My wife and I, my daughter, we're at a Target the other day. I'm in Baltimore, and we're at a Target in Baltimore, and this young girl is on a cell phone, and she's walking through the store, right? She's wearing pajamas, first of all, so there was something odd with that picture, right? There was something odd about that. But the type of conversations that she was having was something that was so private and intimate, it didn't need, folks didn't need to hear it that didn't know it. Exactly. It was TMI with an exclamation point, right? Right. So, yeah, so there are folks who can certainly be harassed as third party members being harassed as well. So if you're a third party or you're the first party, you're the first person who is hearing this or the person who is being directed towards, take it seriously, right? Take it seriously, listen, sympathize, but don't judge, don't delay, respond to concerns, document those behaviors, especially when it happens on a regular basis. Documentation beats conversation, right? So you want to document that, right? Follow up on the complaint and avoid using dangerous words, okay? So here are the dangerous words. I'm just teasing. It's no big deal, okay? The people in our school would never do XYZ, okay? I know he or she didn't mean anything like that. So there's a whole page of different dangerous words, but different things that you need to avoid, because if you say a list of any of these 15, 20 dangerous words there, ultimately that's when you're putting your foot in your mouth, right? You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you want to take a statement back that you said. So pretty much, what is this? KISS, keep it simple. Stupid, right? Keep it simple, right? So protecting yourself and preventing sexual harassment, following checklists can be used to examine behaviors. So this is the playbook right here. This is what you go back to check, okay? Does this behavior contribute to achieving our goals as an organization? All right? Could this behavior hurt my colleagues or students if they were hurt? Could this behavior be sending out signals that invite harassing behaviors on the part of others? Would you say it from in front of your spouse, right? Your parent, or your child? Would you say it if you were going to be quoted on the front page of the newspaper? Would you say or act the same way to a member of your same gender? Why does it need to be said at all? And what business is it furthering? What are you getting out of this as well? So before you say things, because I'm all about thinking critically, right? Having that conscious use of self. Say, hey man, let me think about this before I say something, because you don't want to. Once it comes out, you can't take it back. Yeah. Okay, so the way we communicate is huge. So effective communication, again, like I said, it's an assumed skill. Right, so you can harass somebody, you can totally be disrespectful to someone, but it's an assumed skill that you feel that you assume that someone else has the ability to communicate with you, to be professional, to understand what you said. So sometimes in my trainings, that's why I always like to break in between and say, does that make sense? Does that make sense? To see am I making sense to people? Because I'm giving them a platform to say, hey, no, it doesn't make sense. Can you paraphrase it? Can you try to say it in a way that's different so that I can understand? But we assume that, we work with folks that are from the same profession, or everyone here went to college, that, the difference from just being a jester and what's being serious is as well. But being an effective communicator enables you to lead others, right? When we all were small, we played the telephone game. So I would whisper something in Gordon's ear, and it would go back around. And one time it gets to Tanya, it'll be something that was totally different as well. But it involved getting things accomplished through others as well. So we want to make sure that our message to that individual, to Gordon, if that was the example, to be clear and concise. We don't have to throw all of these little buffers in there. We just want to give them just the facts, right? And it requires trust of the parties involved. So if I ask, if Gordon is my employee and I ask Gordon to do something, out of the trust that I have with him within our relationship, I'm assuming that he's going to get that done. I'm a consultant with ACI, right? They're all the way in San Diego, right? But the trust that they have in me as a professional is that I'm going to come to this organization, do the training, send them the invoice, and we're going to keep doing it again, right? Okay, cool. All right, so it includes both parties speaking and listening, so the nonverbal communication is huge. All right, so multidisciplinary teams, which I know you guys have, they're so much fun, right? Multidisciplinary, yeah, right? So you guys have nurses and social workers and chaplains and doctors and administrators, right? It's a hodgepodge of different professionals, but everybody has a different school of thought. So taking it back a couple of slides earlier, we got, the racial, the ethnicity, the cultural, the backgrounds, the ageism, right? We have all of these variables, and then we get together as a multidisciplinary team, right? So sometimes we're going to have disagreements with individuals. We're going to say, wow, I think that we should do it from this perspective, and someone else is going to say, well, no, I think we should do it from this perspective. And sometimes we can clash, but we can agree to disagree as long as it is respectful, okay? Because that person in the middle of this multidisciplinary team, the person in the middle of all of these degrees and all the team is who? Who's this? The patient, right? So when we're getting upset about our differences and, want to argue, you have somebody's grandmother that's there, right? Somebody's great-grandmother, somebody's mom, right? Because you can't agree to disagree with someone else. So communication breakdown. How do we have communication breakdowns in the workplace? We all have had them before, right? It's when I'm talking to somebody and we're having a conversation, and it could be a heated argument, could be with one of our spouses. Who knows? Any example you want to use. But you ever had something on your mind, on your heart that you really wanted to say, you really wanted to convey to somebody, but before you can finish the sentence, they start talking over you, so you can't get it out, and then when it's your turn to talk, you forget what you were going to talk about, right? Nothing gets done, right? Nothing gets done, so it's a communication breakdown. It's a communication breakdown, so it's a lose-lose situation, okay? But it happens when both parties that are involved are not listening, okay? It's poor eye contact, poor body language, distracting surroundings, okay? I statements and feedbacks, okay? I statements and feedback, rather. So avoid you statements when you're talking to folks, when you're having conflicts, because when you say you didn't do X, Y, Z, you're putting that person on a defense, okay? Be prepared to accept feedback as well, right? And because when we get feedback, sometimes that can be that's a vulnerable situation as well. So folks don't want to receive feedback, right? So, and I'm one of them, right? So I don't like particularly hear feedback, but I will listen because I want to grow. Because what you're giving me feedback from, I want to take that information, filter it, but then feed forward to say, okay, this is what we can do together so that we can make this a workable relationship as well, okay? Workplace violence spectrum, 4 different variables here. Behavior of concern, okay? So disruptive, aggressive, hostile, or emotional abusive behavior. This is just the behavior right there on that first continuum. The second part, it goes to threatening behavior, right? So direct, conditional behavior, stalking, aggressively harassing, physical behavior, non-fatal physical behavior, and then the last one could be death. All right, so if you let it go that far. All right, taking action. If someone appears anxious, stop and assess the situation. Someone who's not, who's normally, charismatic and funny, and then you see that they're acting different. Assess that situation. Remain calm and not threatening. When responding, address the person by name. Just some different caveats to do. Okay. In addition, if someone becomes defensive, take the person seriously. Okay. Always take the person seriously, especially now. When these things go, that you see everything going on in the news, no one expected a 9/11, right? No one prepared for that. No one expected for, a Columbine shooting or, Boston Marathon bomb. And, no one expected for for that. You know, I do another training called psychological first aid to say these are the different things to look out for. These are the contingency plans to make. But then when it does happen, how do we all respond to it? All right? How do we deal with that? For my social workers, I'll tell you a social worker joke about that afterwards. I'm not going to do it now, but ask me about it. Okay. All right. So barriers to reporting workplace violence. Why don't people want to report workplace violence? Because it's fear of retaliation. If I tell HR that this person is threatening me, you know, they could really hurt me. It could become physical. I could lose my life. You know, who wants to go to work and fight? Okay. Fear of getting someone into trouble. You don't want to get them in trouble. Fear of legal action. You know, unsure what to do. Denying of the problem. So based on all of these variables, we have this verbal altercations, we have these differences, then we have office gossip, right? Mel is antagonizing Mike all the time, right? He's bullying him, right? Anybody saw, Different Strokes coming up in the 80s, right? My Generation X's, and they had the Gooch, right? The Gooch was on there. He was the bully, right? We also have the bully in the workplace as well. But office gossip, that's when we all play a role, right? That's when we're all like Susan. Right? Well, Susan, with that example that I gave with her IML and her just being that bystander, right? But that office gossip is like, wow, I see what happened between Mike and Mel, but I'm going to share my interpretation of it with everybody else. So that goes back to making this culture of cancer, of this, you know, negative, you know, in organization, if you will, okay? So the nature of gossip, it's like, why are we so involved in gossip? It's like we want the hot gossip. We want to really know what's new and what's going on. And some people just live to go from drama to drama to drama to drama. Yes, Gordon.
Has anybody in here ever seen the movie Doubt? Came out a couple of years ago. It's also a theater show. Doubt. Meryl Streep played it. And it's this tete-a-tete, or, you know, face-off between this Mother Superior nun and a priest. Without getting into all the details, the priest gives this amazing homily one Sunday, and he says, you know what gossip is? And he gives this example, and I've never heard it put better before. It's somebody that gets up on the rooftop, takes a feather pillow, splits it open, and throws all the feathers all over town. That's what gossip is. Once those feathers get out of the pillow, once that harmful, or maybe wasn't even intended to be harmful, but your perspective gets out on what you thought happened, or what, you know, your person T in that line, and it came from person A, and by the time it got to person T, it's completely different. All those feathers, they don't ever get picked up. No. They're all over town.
Mm-hmm. It's all over town. And I think and thank you for sharing that. And I also think I want to add that, you know, just that one gossip that, you know, you may get all of this energy or these thrills off of, just really take a step back and look at how it's going to impact the organization, how that it's going to impact the resident, right, the patient, the parents of the patient, like just your words. It's like playing that telephone game again, but this is with people's lives, because we're in the healthcare industry right here, right? Am I right? I see people with scrubs on in here. Like, you're actually here to make sure that somebody's loved one is being taken care of and having their last days be honorable, right? And respectful as well. So talking about who's having an argument with somebody else about sexual orientation or their race and ethnicity or how old they are, you know, all of these different variables, it doesn't have anything to do with the patient. That's the most important person that's here. And they're not here in this room right now, but you guys are here because you provide that service to that individual, because without that patient, none of us would be here, myself included, right? Wouldn't be here at all right? So this is huge. The company policies and procedures. I don't know your policies and procedures, but know your company policies and procedures around workplace violence. Know that, because that's your playbook, right? Because if you see that someone's being violent towards you, being antagonistic towards you, maybe sexually harassing you, you can go to HR, or you can go to your own manual. I'm sure you all have it because you signed off on one, right? You can say, wow, what are the policies and procedures, and how does it impact me? And what's my recourse with this, right? What are the steps that I need to take to get some solitude, okay? The goal is to create a safe work environment for everyone, all right? Key reminders: foster respect and dignity in all interactions, right? So we have a responsibility to ourselves to be positive, right? It's okay to be positive. I mean, it's easy to be negative. Say, oh my God, it's raining outside, so I'm just so bummed out. No, we can all be positive, right? It takes nothing to just smile at someone, because that can also be contagious, right? Because when you're negative, that can be contagious as well. So you want to create the best harmonious environment at the workplace that you possibly can. Because guess what? Tomorrow you're going to be here, right? So why not set up a platform of the environment that you want to be in, right? You guys got pizza here and soda. I thought it was all for me, but that's for you guys, right? So this is a great place to be. So you want to infuse that positivity, right? It costs you nothing just to smile at someone, right? You don't have to wear what happens, in your personal life as well. So there's a bunch of key caveats as well. But lastly, if you are involved in some sort of workplace violence, someone sexually harassing you, any of those variables that I shared before, and feel like you're a victim of it, just know that you do have an employee assistance program that's here to help you as well as your household members as well. It's absolutely free. It's absolutely confidential. No one's going to ask you what went on with the counselor when you go there. I mean, it's free for your family members. Like, they may not have been at this training, right? But they may experience something that we talked about today. So you can tell them to call the EAP to take advantage of this family benefit that you have as well. So I want to close out and just thank you all for your time. It's so great being back here. And next time I'll come and get some pizza with you guys as well. Right? Oh, she have a question? Yeah, question. I'm sorry.
You said earlier, page 3, about mandatory EAPs, make a comment, and if a person is violent towards you, the workplace, and so on and so forth, that management can actually make them go to EAP. Is that lawful? And does that depend on what organization you work for?
It all depends on what you. I'm sorry, HR. I'll refer to her. Thank you. Take your bill.
In actuality, we can't force you to go. We can highly recommend, because if you're constitute of behavior and whatever it is, and we're asking you to take this and assume that it will help in the situation. If you don't take it and the behavior continues on, then it'll be disciplinary action that will take place ultimately. But if we recommend you to take it and you're going through this and you're taking whatever was recommended through EAP to help you work through and get through whatever it may be. But no, we can't force you, but we can highly recommend you. If we was to put into place a corrective action, we can recommend that, but also letting you know you do have a choice. But if this behavior continues on, it can lead up to further disciplinary action and up to termination.
And then I just want to add, just on the EAP side, because I worked in an EAP for 4 years, so on the other end of it, right? So if it's mandatory, the employer wants to check in to see if you were making those appointments, right? So that part is also confidential, because when the employer calls that person on the phone, who is the liaison between the organization and the clinician, all they're going to say is this employee was compliant or this employee was non-compliant. That's all they can share. They're not going to share what went on, what you talked about within your individual session as well. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? All right, thank you guys. Have a great day, all right? Stay positive.
Thank you.
Thank you.